should be live. Let me just do a very, very quick sound check to make sure that we are live. Not so much to make sure we're live, rather to make sure that you can hear me. Let's give it one moment. If they could come on right here. How we doing? Check 1, 2. We're good. All right, I'm going to switch this to public. Welcome to another live stream. Very sorry for starting late. I had a couple of very annoying situations take place. So here I am live though. I forgot my phone and then I had to run back and get it. And then there's some other things that happened. Technical difficulties galore. I'm very sorry. I apologize for being so late, but thank you all for being here. Anybody who joins me, please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know what your thoughts are on Freemasonry. Again, any thoughts you have, positive, negative, or neutral, I'd love to hear them. And thank you for joining. And thank you to everybody who joined me this morning for my push-up challenge. I did 63 push-ups in front of the Windsor Masonic Temple. Went very well. So thank you to everybody who watched me, who supported me. This is responsible for, or this is about raising awareness for mental health. 2,000 is the number of people lost to suicide approximately every day. So yeah, it went very well. Today's number was 63. That is, let me just get the information actually. I had it somewhere about why 63, why they picked that number. Hello, Stone Raider. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a great day. All right, let's see. And I'm supporting CMHA Windsor, Essex. I got to figure out how to sign in. Thank you, Stone Raider. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I don't know if you saw it yet, or I hope that you did get the chance to watch it, to see it. Let me know what you thought of it. Let me know what you thought of the Masonic Temple behind me while I was doing it. Because, yeah, I thought it went very, very well. I don't know what the number is for tomorrow yet or where I'm going to do it, where I'm going to do the push-ups, but once I know, I'll let you know. All right. We're just going to hang out, though. We're going to wait a few more minutes, wait to see who else joins. Oh, here it is. So today was 63 push-ups because 63% of adults say that being kind boosts their mental health. So let's everybody be kind. And let's remember 63% of adults say that being kind boosts their mental health. Hello, CEO of My Time. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know how your day is going. I'm trying to build a better world through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Honestly, I got to do about that many every day, sometimes slightly more, sometimes slightly less, but it's 2,000 push-ups over the next 23 days. Yes, I got a big nose. Please hit like and subscribe, Rose Fox. And I hope that you are doing well. Thank you for being here. Hello, Strategy Master. Thank you for being here also. I hope you're doing well. Please take a moment, hit that like button and subscribe button, and thank you for joining. We're just going to hang out, wait to see who joins. As always, hit the like and subscribe button. The last couple days, I talked about cults, both what a cult is, what its characteristics are, and therefore why Freemasonry is not a cult. I also talked about what to do if you or somebody you know might be involved in a cult, resources. I also talked a little bit about World Cancer Day and Masonic research related to cancer, or more specifically, the ways that Masons have given money to and supported cancer research. There you go. This is a nice cult. Mog MSM. I don't. What is it? Mogging when you like look down on someone for being less attractive? I think I heard that's a term of mogging, which I'm not a big fan of. That because I'm very ugly, so everybody could look down on me. But I think I have to put you in a bit of a timeout because you keep saying the same thing over and over again. There you go. This is a nice cult. This is the cult of Square and Compass Promotions. Let's hope so, Mr. Works. I hope Masonry's around for a long time as well, but the extent to which it will or will not be around really is going to be dependent on how hard Masons are willing to work, right? The success of any organization, including Freemasonry, is dependent at the end of the day on, amongst other things, the dedication, effort of the membership. That's true for any group. That's true for the Moose, the Elks, the Knights of Columbus, and everything in between. Long live the cult. There you go. Freemasonry is not a cult. I explained why, what the characteristics of a cult are. I was also really happy to touch on and explain what to do if either you or someone you know might be involved in a cult, and also why it is that he was on earlier today. He might be back. Why it is that I think within Freemasonry, not only why Freemasonry is not a cult, but what to do if a cult is pretending to be Masonic in order to mislead people and get them to join. There is one topic I'm heavily debating talking about because I hate the subject. I don't want to talk about it personally for a lot of reasons. However, as many people may have been hearing, the Epstein files are in the news. The Department of Justice in the States created a searchable database, which you must be 18 years of age or older to access. And unfortunately, I have got a few comments from people on these streams. First of all, arguing that Jeffrey Epstein was a Freemason. To my knowledge, he was not. I've seen no evidence that he was. Then they argue that his associates were Freemasons. I've not seen any evidence that anybody named in the Epstein files is a Freemason. However, when you do a search on the justice.gov site using the term Freemason, there are 11 results that pop up, primarily about a gentleman by the name of Daniel David Palmer, who lived from 1845 to 1913. I guess there is some type of email sent regarding osteopathy and chiropractic sciences. And apparently there was some fella named Palmer who back in the day was the founder of osteopathy, who was into magic and metaphysics. They claim that he was a spiritualist and an occultist and a Freemason. Let me see if I can find. Yes, Daniel David Palmer, founder of chiropractic, was a Freemason and an occultist. His original practice was to heal people with what he called magnetic healing, which was a combination of laying on hands, hypnotism, and white magic. Of course, it was not called white magic. It was called magnetic healing by Palmer. This was in an email sent, I guess it would have been July 12th, 2009, from Jeffrey Epstein to Avila da Silva. It says, please call me to discuss. In the United States, as in England, there were certain families who passed their bone setting skills down as family trade secrets. Apparently, he was interested in bone setting and osteopathy, amongst other things, obviously. The point is, I hate this discussion topic. However, the conspiracy theorists are starting to go a little bit crazy, trying to connect Freemasonry to Jeffrey Epstein. That concerns me quite a bit as a Freemason. That concerns me quite a bit as someone who hates conspiracy theorists. So I was thinking of going through the Epstein library, justice.gov, doing searches for Freemason, Freemasonry, and Masonic, and seeing the results and what they are. As I said, there is, at least when I do it, justice.gov/Epstein. When I search the term Freemason, we get 11 results. Freemasonry, we get 14 results. Masonic, we get 19 results. I haven't gone through them all yet. What I have been able to at least determine thus far is A, Jeffrey Epstein was not a Mason to my knowledge. B, nobody involved with Jeffrey Epstein was a Mason. It looks like all of the discussions within his emails when Masonry is mentioned is about historical Masons or historical events. He discusses the P2 Lodge, famously from Italy, nor did his P2 Lodge ever hold meetings or conduct ordinary Masonic business as prescribed by Freemasonry. They talk about something from 1986, some clandestine Mason who died in prison in Rome. The point is, I haven't gone through them all yet. They mention a book, 10,000 Famous Freemasons, Volume 4. I was going to go through it because, as I said, the conspiracy theorists are, I'm sure, so I might as well get out ahead of it and deal with it. I have no doubt many conspiracy theorists and many people with false ideas of what Freemasonry is are searching the files. It seems like it's all historical information. Again, one of the emails that Jeffrey Epstein sent was apparently about some osteopathic doctor from the 1800s who was a Freemason and an occultist and founded, I guess, some new technique of bone setting. Another one seems to be about the P2 Lodge in Italy. I don't know who sent that email. Anyways, I was going to go through it and maybe discuss it on the chat. I know it's not going to make a big difference to all the people who are themselves conspiracy theorists, but hopefully to the people who know what Freemasonry is all about, it will at the very least give them the answers. So if somebody comes up to them and approaches them and tells them, hey, Freemasonry is implicated in the Epstein files, you can respond, no, it's not, and here's, what it actually says. Because, for example, I just got a message a couple days ago on one of these streams. Somebody said Freemasonry is referenced 300 times in the files, and again, doing the search just now, at most, it looks like it's referenced 19 times. So anyways, yeah, I figured that might be worth discussing, although again, I'm not a big fan of these discussions. I hate this, amongst other things, one of the reasons I don't like it personally is because I think doing these, focusing so heavily on the Epstein files, it takes our attention away from where, for the vast majority of people, the danger is. I worked in a jail for many years. I was a probation officer for many years. I worked with sexual offenders, people who committed crimes against adults and children of a sexual nature for many years, in jail as a probation officer. I can tell you, the risk is far more likely to come from somebody that the victim has a pre-existing relationship with, as opposed to, either somebody in the bushes or some billionaire flying people around, right? The real danger for most is that there are resources, there are shelters, within one's communities. That's what we need to be focusing on. What are the shelters in your communities that can help you? Who do you call if you're being hurt? What do you do if you think somebody's being hurt? A neighbor, a friend, a family member, a child. What are your responsibilities? What does CAS do? I think that's far more important than worrying about Epstein personally. Think local. Think how can you help local people in your community who might be victims of abuse. In the same way with the cult stuff, right? Yes, there are international cults, there are global cults, I'm sure. What's more important for you as an individual is know the resources in your area, know the warning signs to look out for, and know the ways to help people. If this makes any sense at all. Um, yes, you should call local law enforcement right away, James Dolan. You're absolutely not incorrect. Um, Both can be addressed. Dream Seeker, how's it going? What is odd? Um, well, AI Time Traveler, so is Michael Jackson, so is Elvis, so is Jon Stewart, host of The Daily Show. That's my point as well, and that was always my response for the longest time. When people would say Freemasonry is mentioned in the files, my response would always be, so is Jon Stewart, so is Elvis, so is, all these different people that have nothing to do with what Epstein was doing. They're just referenced in random emails. In Jon Stewart's case, I guess he was referenced. They were talking about they wanted to do some type of charity event, obviously as a cover for their horrible things or a way to launder their reputation. And they were suggesting, I guess, Jon Stewart could be a host. A lot of celebrities got mentioned who were never had any personal connection or involvement. They're just mentioned in emails. Um, However, I want, especially for Masons, I want them to have the ability to, if somebody comes up to them and says, I heard that you guys are referencing the Epstein files, I want Masons to be able to respond with what the references are, where they are, and what they're about. For example, the majority of the references seem to come from one single email that was Jeffrey Epstein talking about the founder of some type of bone setting or massage, like bone setting or osteopathy, I think it's called, from 1896 is when he passed away, 100 and something years ago. So I think it's worth Freemasons having the ability to know how to respond to that stuff. Yes, I think humans landed on the moon, MOG DSM. I'm sure they did. This is why I hate conspiracy theories. Um, you are you are top. Nice to be a CEO. Trip me out. We do not. I mean, we have our private ceremonies. None of them are disgusting. None of them are evil. I've said I've been to 1,000 Masonic events around the world, including ceremonies and rituals. At no point have I seen anything that I would describe as disgusting, dangerous, illegal, immoral, unsanitary. If you want to throw that in, use the word disgusting, nor anything that is against one's civic, religious, or familial responsibilities. You keep saying I'm lower tier. How lower tier can I be? I've been a Mason for 20 years, just about. I've been all around the world. I've been to lodges in the Philippines, Asia, Philippines, South America, North America. Oh, I worked in a jail. I was a rehab officer. I worked with inmates or clients, I would call them, when they were scheduled for release to try to find them things like housing, support systems, get them in touch maybe if they're religious with a religious support system, food banks, job opportunities, housing, try to keep them in their apartment. However, if we had a sexual offender who was scheduled for release, I would also make sure that the victim was informed, so they knew. I made sure that both the offender and the victim were well aware of any court orders about like not to make contact with the victim. The victim knew what to do if contact was made. I made sure the police were made aware of the release date as well. So the police knew, hey, this person is getting released. I also made sure that if they had a probation officer, the probation officer was made aware. All of that stuff is incredibly important. And I was proud of that. I always said that being a rehab officer, you kind of had three responsibilities or three masters, to use a Masonic term. First, you had to worry about public safety and making sure that anybody being released, if there were any threats to public safety, you do whatever you can to mitigate those threats by informing whomever needs to be informed. Primarily, that would be police, probation officers, and victims. The second was the institution itself. I needed to make sure that when I was going in to interview, for example, an inmate or a client, it wouldn't interfere with institutional operations. If there's some type of crisis going on, the correctional officers need to be somewhere else to do something or need to lock everybody up. I have to accept that and work around that. And the third, and I know I don't like to use the term triggering, but I think this may trigger some people in some ways. The third is I had to be respectful and responsible to the client as well, to the inmate. I'm there to work with him to give him the best chance of success upon release. When I say success, that means living a good life that includes being a productive member of society and not reoffending. That means trying to get him housing, trying to get him educational programs, anger management programs, drug and alcohol programs, trying to set him up for success, because his success is society's success or her success. There will be no benefit at all to him. It's not just going to hurt him to get released and reoffend, it's going to hurt everybody. And if, for example, there's an educational program that he does not take advantage of, that increases his risk to reoffend, or I don't help him get into, because lack of education was a major risk factor to reoffending. Not having a job, major risk factor to reoffending. So I was proud of the work I did and trying to work with all three of those groups or individuals or shareholders or masters, call it what you will, in order to create the best outcomes. And I did some good things. I was proud of that. But that does give me a little bit of a different idea of the Epstein stuff. And again, my concern is so much of the focus is on this idea of these, because it's salacious and it's powerful people and it's fun to see powerful people brought down and it makes people feel like they're doing something. It's if you are ever confronted with someone who's been the victim of abuse, or heaven forbid, knock on wood, you yourself ever are, it's more than likely not going to be some master of the universe politician or rich dude. It's more than likely going to be somebody that is known to you, that's in a position of trust, or that's known to the victim, or in a position of trust with the victim. And you're far better to know your local resources, including calling the authorities. If you think anybody's in danger, calling 911, letting the police know, knowing where the shelters are, knowing how to talk to somebody, knowing how to set up like an escape plan. I worked with a lot of victims of domestic violence. One thing we talked about was, okay, if you need to leave in a hurry, how can you get out? Do you have a place you can go? Do you have copies of your identification somewhere? Because very often abusive partners would keep identification and not let the partner have it, or keep a cell phone on them. Did you know that even if your cell phone doesn't have any minutes on it, or you haven't paid the bill, it will still call 911. All cell phones are designed to call 911. And in fact, one really cool program I've heard of various police departments do is when you're upgrading your phone, getting a new one, you can take your old phone, you wipe it clean of all the information, and you take your old phone to the police department. They give it to women's shelters and women's groups, as well as, for that matter, children, like CAS can take it. And that way, if the woman, if the victim is not able to have a phone herself, the partner keeps it or controls it, she can get another phone. At the very least, it can be used to call 911 in case of emergency. So that's an interesting service. Don't put yourself in harm, obviously, if they're in the same way with the cults. If they're potentially the victim of abuse, you absolutely don't want to be stepping in and trying to necessarily put yourself in front of the situation, especially if you're, at risk of being hurt yourself or doing anything illegal. What you want to do is contact the authorities, make sure they know, and just be there for the people, right? But again, that's going to be probably far more helpful in your day-to-day life than worrying about the rich and powerful, horrible people out there that are harming others, um, for whatever it's worth. Uh, so Mog, you should just, um, what you should do is just give the $100 directly to the charity. Don't give it to me. Just give the $100 directly to the charity. Um, there is no door code. I wish there was. Some lodges do actually have codes to get into the building. Others use key fobs. We have key fobs at our building. Others just still use manual keys. Hello, Courtney. Thank you for being here. Dream Seeker. You're not wrong, Dream Seeker. They absolutely do not talk a lot about men in abusive situations, and it absolutely happens. You are completely correct about that. It does happen far more than we perhaps are willing to or admit. In some cases, it's because men themselves are not reporting it because there's this attitude in society of like, if you're just a man, you should just be tough and you should be able to handle it. And, what are you, a wuss? Which is all bullshit. Men can be just as much at risk of being victims of abuse as anybody else. And if they're made to feel weaker or less than by admitting the abuse, that's the fault of society, not the fault of them. But that can be one of the reasons. Also, in some cases, we don't always, especially as men, recognize what abuse is. We're very easy to recognize and understand, for example, what emotional abuse is. What physical abuse is, but we sometimes have a harder time recognizing what emotional abuse might be, or verbal abuse. So yeah, it is very difficult, and also there are less resources for men to get out of abusive situations. For example, there are far more bed spaces for women who are victims of abuse than men who are victims of abuse if you need to get to a shelter. Illuminati and Freemasons are not the same organization. Well, I mean, if you have money and you want to give me a super chat, that's very kind of you. But if you have money and you want to give it to charity, you should do that as well. In fact, I would say that is, especially with the 2,000 push-ups thing happening right now, CAMH, the Canadian Association for Mental Health, is taking donations. I've got a donation page up for my push-ups. You can do that as well if you would prefer. XX Georgia, what do you mean by yes and no? Well, we got a troll on here. Are we establishing that all politicians all politicians are not Freemasons. In fact, the majority of politicians are not Freemasons. I've known within my Masonic career of 20 years, maybe 3 politicians who were Freemasons. They were all at the city council level. For example, one was a city councilor, one was a mayor. That's as high as it went. The ultimate plan, there is no ultimate plan for Freemasonry. Yes, I got bad teeth. There is no ultimate plan for Freemasonry, David. Every Mason needs to determine for himself what the plan is. For example, for me, I think the goal is to build a better world through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. For others, it's to create friends. To others, it's to maintain a historical organization and historical body. For others, it's to develop skills and abilities. Some would say it's to make good men better, but I'm not a huge fan of that term. I think for me personally, every Freemason needs to decide for himself what the goal is. But I think in the most general sense, it's no different than the ultimate goal of getting together with your friends on a Friday night. It's the desire to hang out with people you enjoying one another's company. You could argue, why must there be a bigger plan than that? Why must there be a better plan than that? Um, um, sometimes to enjoy one another's company is good enough. Um, Occultism, I mean, Christianity was once occult by definition, right? XX Georgia. Occultism simply means something that is hidden or something that is kept private. So, certainly throughout various points in history, for a variety of reasons, Christianity was occult, um, as has been Judaism, Muslim faith, Freemasonry, right? There's nothing inherently anti-Christian or against any god when it comes to occultism, right? Occultism just means to maintain the privacy of something. For example, your social insurance number and health card information would be occult by definition. Um, I would agree with that, Dream Seeker. I certainly think it indicates a very challenging life. And it's unfortunate, right? That's why I always say trolls, I think, are more to be pitied than disliked, although it can be very difficult to not dislike them um, for that reason. Um, This is not a Freemason expose. I am a Freemason. I've been a Freemason for almost 20 years. I love Freemasonry. I think it is a wonderful organization. It has its challenges. It absolutely has its challenges. And I do talk about those sometimes. But the idea that Freemasonry is what you think it is, XX, is not the case. It's a sign of not understanding what Freemasonry actually is, for whatever it's worth. Right? Freemasonry is not satanic, etc., nor is it against religion, nor is it against God. So there you go. You can take that for whatever it's worth. Well, I hope you're laughing with me and not at me, although if it's the latter, then so be it. Or the former, so be it. Lazy Lab Rat, I think you're new to the stream. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It's not a back scratching network. And Georgia, what does it mean to be a 33rd degree? What does that mean? What power does that give you? What influence does that give you? What control does that give you? Let me ask you this question, XX Georgia, because it's clear you don't understand what you are referencing. What would happen if the 33rd degree was removed from Freemasonry? What would happen to Freemasonry? What would happen to the lodges? What would happen to the organization? Why is the 33rd degree more relevant to you than the third degree, which is the highest degree in Freemasonry, in fact, the third degree? But what does it mean to be a 33rd degree Mason? Because that is something I don't think you understand, even a little bit. I think it's very relevant because you brought up the 33rd degree, but I don't think you know what it is or its influence or its relevance within Freemasonry, or even if it matters at all to the typical Masonic journey. I got so many tattoos. I got all of these. I got all of these. So I got many tattoos. Well, what does that mean? Emblematic light. I think what you mean is emblematic, for the record. What does it mean? Again, if the 33rd degree is so important, what influence, power, control do they wield over the craft lodges, over the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry? What power, influence, or control do they wield over York Rite Masons, or Shrine, or the youth groups, or Eastern Star, right? I have been branded indeed. Cults definitely, they don't always live together, Dream Seeker, but they absolutely can, which can again make it harder to leave. If you ask the question, why is it that somebody doesn't leave a cult? One of the reasons is they may be living with the cult. The cult may have had them give up their house and finances and live with them. It's because the leaders are in this cult. I have no idea what that means, XX, but you're not really answering the question of why is a 33rd degree relevant? What power, influence, or control or leadership do they hold within Freemasonry? And what would happen if the 33rd degrees were to leave? or to not be part of Freemasonry anymore. Because again, you brought up the 33rd degrees. By the way, I disagree, or your premise is just wrong, that it's some type of satanic thing, which it's not. But even if it was, what difference would it actually make to the Masonic journey for membership? What difference would it make outside of Freemasonry? Do the 33rds have any control, influence, or power in the world in general, outside of, for example, a Masonic lodge? It is not that either, Constantin Decker. Well, King Solomon is not the sun. King Solomon is a mythological or a theological figure. The sun is the sun. You can, if you want to use it metaphorically, you can argue that King Solomon and his wisdom can represent the sun. The sun shines light on the earth. Light is very often considered to be an emblem of wisdom or intelligence. So that can exist. I mean, I'm not saying there can't be metaphorical, but you could argue in the same way Einstein is the sun. It's metaphor. It's a metaphor for wisdom or knowledge. He was not. This is just what I was talking about, lazy lab rat. Jeffrey Epstein was not a Freemason. This is why I think I need to actually go through the Department of Justice Epstein files and do a live stream where I go through each time Freemasonry or Masonic is mentioned in the files, which Masonic is mentioned in the files 19 times, for whatever it's worth. I use the term Masonic, Masonry, and Mason. Sorry, Masonic, Masonry, and Freemasonry, and Freemason. I didn't use the term Mason yet for a search because that's also people's names, so it can get tricky. Skull and Bones are not what our leaders are. Skull and Bones are a whole different organization and group. They're a Yale fraternity. The leadership is not Skull and Bones. There is no Masonic leadership in the sense that you think Freemasonry has decentralized leadership. So, for example, in Ontario, the leader is the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Ontario. The Grand Lodge of Canada, Province of Ontario. They are exclusive jurisdiction and leadership therein. There is no global or even national Masonic leadership in North America. In Europe, there can be national Masonic bodies, but by and large, it's still jurisdictional. There is no global Masonic leadership or global Masonic leaders. I don't know who Alan West is. I hope he's handsome. Well, I mean, sure. I mean, I've heard You Are My Sunshine, right? It's the song. The sun can be a metaphor for a lot of different people. Sometimes it can be people who spread knowledge. Sometimes it can be people who make you feel good. There's a whole children's song, right? You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. That doesn't mean they're literally the sun. It just means, they bring light and happiness to you. Only ancient third degree. Well, I'm not a Knight of Columbus, so I wouldn't understand that. He is a former House rep. Okay, well, I hope he's a handsome former House rep. WT Fish happening. Well, I mean, that's an interesting idea. I've heard some people argue that theologically. They've argued that, in fact, the serpent in the garden was not actually, and again, I'm not a theological expert. I'm way over my skis on this, but I heard Alex O'Connor talk about this. He said that some have argued that it was actually Prometheus type figure, including potentially Jesus, who wanted man to gain knowledge. That is kind of something similar to what Albert Pike thought. Kilmon Kills. I have zero idea what you're talking about. I'm very sorry to say. I wish I could respond to it, but it seems like gibberish and nonsense to me. Well, Freemasons, some Masonic lodges have the sun. Like Rising Sun is the common name for a Masonic lodge, actually. A lot of lodges are called the Rising Sun Lodge. There's one in Illinois called that. It's more not so much the sun, but the idea of light and the idea of knowledge and wisdom. So Freemasons, I mean, the sun is referenced in various Masonic rituals. It's usually meant to be representative of the idea of light or knowledge or wisdom. Um, as represented through, for example, the worshipful master or Solomon symbolically, but not literally. They're not literally the same person or the same object. Um, it was started not necessarily ancient temple builders, David Thompson. It was started from middle age temple builders, middle age stonemasons. It did start in Scotland, that is true as well. When I first entered the lodge, um, I don't know. I didn't have any expectations, but my biggest surprise was definitely, and still is, the amount of work, effort, and energy it takes to actually properly administer and run and organize a Masonic lodge. That is something very few people realize and very few people understand. And it's unfortunate because it is absolutely an incredible amount of work and an incredible amount of effort. So, nothing but respect to the to the temple builders, to all the administrators, secretaries, treasurers, whomever else it might be, for all of the work and effort put into it. You got to fill out forms. You got to show up. You got to vacuum the lodge, clean the lodge. You got to make sure your all of your different documents are up to date. Whatever you need is up to date. All that stuff is really important. It can be great for networking, fish happening, but that's not the reason exclusively to join Freemasonry, especially because Freemasonry is dropping significantly in numbers. And so you're not going to get the same networking benefits you could even 30, 40 years ago. However, it's like anything. You join any group organization, part of the benefits of it is you meet new people, and that can result in potentially a better a better network for you. It did not. It did not start as revolt as anything. It's really started because men wanted to hang out together in a social setting. They wanted to join, a club and a group. And Masonic lodges were a pre-existing club or group that they could join. They could pay dues into it, and as a consequence, be part of it. So it's a really cool little thing to remember. We have served spaghetti in the past. We normally serve green beans, DJ. That's the joke. But we have in the past served green beans. So yeah, which are in our lodges. I have, but I got to do it again because the interview I did at the time, it wasn't very well done. The audio was kind of crummy for a lot of different reasons. So I do want to do it again. It'd be really even valuable to do an email where what I do is, interview a Mason a week after he joins, a month after he joins, like a year after he joins, and let's say 5 years after he joins, and put them all together at the same time. I think that'd be really, really cool and really fun. I may after, don't want to search Chinese cookies at the moment because it's probably a whole different can of tuna to go into. Alamo City. If I was gay or straight, would it make any difference? I'm a Freemason. Freemasons do not discriminate based on sexual orientation. You need to keep that in mind as well. Rocky. Sometimes I get angry. I try not to be, but it can happen. What makes you think I'm very angry? Mostly I'm just hanging out waiting to see people who join. And again, any thoughts on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral? I'd like to hear them. I don't have any specific topics for today. The last few streams, it's been talking about, amongst other things, it's been talking about cults, the danger of cults, why Freemasonry is not a cult, and what to do if you suspect someone is within a cult and is at risk. Or if you think you might have been part of a cult yourself. It's especially important since many cults and many groups and many coercive or harmful groups are actually using Masonic symbols and Masonic words and Masonic phrases and Masonic iconography to try and lure people into their groups and organizations. I actually had a poll question about that. I don't think you want to be a cult leader. I think it's a lot of work. What was it that Creed says in The Office? He's been part of many cults, both both as a leader and as a follower. And what does he say? He says you have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader. So I suppose it's up to what you want. Um, I mean, some Masons may be Gnostic, right? Gnosticism is a world view. It's not a specific kind of religion or ideology. I would say that Freemasonry has some Gnostic qualities to it, but it's not inherently Gnostic. There are many Masons who would not describe themselves as Gnostic. They probably describe themselves in specifically religious terms. Liberal, conservative, specifically religious terms, Christian, Muslim, Jewish. They may describe themselves in more philosophical terms, but there are parallels between Freemasonry and Gnosticism, for sure. No, we did not, Critter. Um, but I need to look a little bit more into Gnosticism, right? Um, but as a general rule, to my understanding, Gnosticism, again, it's more a philosophy as opposed to a particular like religious or spiritual belief. So some Freemasons may identify themselves as Gnostic, some may not. I would not identify myself as a Gnostic. I would say, if I had to describe my worldview, I would say it's utilitarian, you know, um, or even kind of a Kantian philosophy, somewhat. You could, I mean, I don't know enough about Gnosticism to say, right? Kid corrupt. So, and I don't know what, for example, a Christian's view of Gnosticism would be. Again, to my knowledge, Gnosticism comes from this Greek word meaning knowledge and search for knowledge. Certainly within Freemasonry, there is this idea of searching for a certain type of knowledge, not spiritual, but rather the knowledge of how to build a better community, build a better world here on earth, leaving, one's belief in salvation or spiritualism to their religious beliefs. Um, we emphasize wisdom, strength, and beauty. In a world that often feels chaotic, where do you find Masonic beauty? That's a very good question. It's sometimes hard to find beauty. I find beauty in nature. I mean, I would say you could consider Stoicism to be a closer Masonic philosophy than Gnosticism. One thing that Stoicism says is, true beauty, true happiness is to live in accordance with nature. And so I like to think that I try my best to live in accordance with nature as rationally understood through science and geometry and observation. No, strategy master, there's no significance. Some will get tattoos that are Masonic, like I did, right? I showed these before, but that's just because I like tattoos and I wanted to get them. It's not as though it has any special significance. And for example, if I were to, you could go into a tattoo shop and ask to get a Masonic tattoo and not be a Mason. In the same way, you can't rely upon somebody wearing a Masonic ring or a Masonic apron in order to, you cannot expect rely on a Masonic ring or Masonic shirt to prove somebody's a Freemason, because they can buy one at a pawn shop or whatever it is. In the same token, you can't rely on somebody having a Masonic tattoo to prove that they are a Freemason. because you don't need to prove you're a Mason to get a Masonic tattoo. It'd be nice maybe if the tattoo artist required it, but at the end of the day, they're a business. They're going to do what their customer asks, so long as it's nothing illegal. And there's nothing illegal about getting yourself a Masonic tattoo. Um, in what term is light bearer used in Freemasonry? I mean, light bearer has never been used in my Freemasonry because I don't forget, I'm 18th degree Scottish Rite. I can't speak for ceremonies beyond that. What I can say is Albert Pike famously talked about the light bringer within Morals and Dogma. He was referring to it as he was using it as a kind of Prometheus type figure. The serpent in the garden being different from Satan. But that was used within Morals and Dogma. I have never heard the term light bringer or Lucifer or Satan in any mainstream Masonic rituals, including within Scottish Rite. So it's a misunderstanding of what Albert Pike was saying. I've never heard it used in Scottish Rite rituals. I've researched Scottish Rite rituals. I've sat in lodges with 33rd degree Masons very many times. I've been to 33rd degree events. With the exception of Albert Pike and a misunderstanding, both a misunderstanding on the part of Albert Pike in terms of what he was saying, but I also think Albert Pike did not really understand what he was saying either, if that makes sense. He was giving his personal Masonic philosophies, which I don't think were correct or are correct. Well, each degree does, to a certain extent, have its own unique meanings and its own unique philosophies. But there is a commonality amongst them all, right? To my knowledge, within every Masonic degree, the idea of light is almost always used as a metaphor for knowledge or for wisdom, as is the sun, right? It's also the taxel hoax. However, once again, Lightbringer, Lucifer, Morningstar, that is not part of any Masonic ritual of which I'm aware, at least any mainstream Masonic ritual. It's exclusively coming from Albert Pike and the taxel hoax. I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Hierarchical structures to elimination. There are hierarchical structures to learning more, but that's within human nature, not exclusively Freemasonry. For example, to use stone masonry, which is, the thing from which, or the group, or the practice, or the craft from which Freemasonry evolved, there was hierarchical structures to knowledge in that you started out as an entered apprentice. You learn more, you gain more knowledge, you become a fellow craft. Eventually, you can become a master, you can become a teacher of others, right? You teach others how to be a Freemason. And so, or how to be a speculative Mason. That's also true, for example, when I was a professional wrestling student. As I advanced and learned more, I got more knowledge. Eventually, I could become more of in some ways, help with training a little bit. All of that stuff was incredibly important and incredibly helpful and incredibly valuable. So I think human nature is such, it's a journey. And as you spend more time learning more, as you spend more time developing your skills and abilities, in all of those cases, you will become more illuminated, at least metaphorically, in terms of whatever it is you're learning about. I think it's one of the greatest skills within Freemasonry, is it reminds us of that. They sometimes say Freemasonry is progressive in nature, which it is. Life is progressive in nature. Childhood to adulthood is the progress of learning more about how to live. I do not, Faithful Mustang. I have trained um, in a little bit of martial arts and boxing and MMA just to get my skills up. But beyond that, no, I have not uh, really trained, at least any great deal. I tried some boxing and I did a lot of MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the past, which I've really enjoyed. I really enjoy hot yoga, which isn't combat sports at all, I know, but it's a type of exercise I really enjoy doing, especially through core power yoga. Um, I am a blind candidate. Uh, we're all blind. We're all blind, even in life. Life is a process of seeing more and more if we're paying attention and if we're willing to use our reason and our knowledge and our intelligence. So there you go. I would hope not, because if you own slaves, you're committing a crime. And if you're committing a crime, you should not be a Freemason. Now, historically, slave owners were Freemasons. George Washington, as one example, maybe the most famous example. Um, Freemasons will fight sometimes, not physically, hopefully, but certainly we can have disagreements. But Freemasonry gives us the tools to deal with those disagreements in a healthy way. Um, well, we're going to put you in a bit of a timeout. But yeah, Freemasonry should, one of the things we are taught within Freemasonry is to be respectful of the laws of the country in which you live. That includes, not owning slaves. And also, I would suggest, in a moral sense, in 2026, if you are a slave owner, you're probably an immoral person. And as a consequence of that, you should not be joining Freemasonry, especially because you would have to sit with men of all different races and religions and ethnicities and creeds. And if you think some of them could be or should be owned as slaves or less than people, that's a pretty huge problem. Um, never seen two Freemasons fight physically. $400 a month is incredibly high. I mean, anything's possible, Jason Bender, but $400 a month, that seems insane. Um, I've never heard of dues that high. I'm a member of 5 Masonic lodges. I pay dues as low as $25 a year and as high as $250 a year. In terms of criminal background, if you were not a Freemason and you committed a crime and went to jail, that's not an automatic exclusion in most jurisdictions. They may request a criminal record check, and depending on the nature of the crime, what happened, and also steps you've taken to make amends, that may they may allow you to join, they may not. What I always tell people is don't prejudge. If you have a criminal record, but you've taken steps to, pay your debt to society, gone to jail, gone to counseling, dealt with whatever it is that caused you to, be in that situation, you should absolutely still apply, tell them what happened, and go from there. If you're already a Freemason, you've been told and you've been instructed to obey the laws of the country in which you live. In such circumstances and in such cases, what you need to do is you may be suspended for unmasonic conduct because committing a crime is against what it means to be a Freemason. However, by the same token, you should absolutely, pay your debt to society, go to jail, do whatever it is that has to, pay your fines, and then, after a little bit of time has passed, you can reapply, again, explain what happened, and see if they'll let you back in. And it's up to the lodge. Well, because he made major reforms, um, but those reforms are not, first of all, it's very much more focused on Southern jurisdiction. I mean, in Canada, we do borrow a lot from Southern jurisdiction of Freemasonry, but you can make reforms, and I can believe those reforms have value without believing that your overall philosophy was correct. I mean, a good example might be professional wrestling, Rondo. So, for example, I really loved being a professional or taking professional wrestling training. And I greatly enjoyed it. That doesn't mean that when it comes to, I'm not going to name names, but that when it comes to every person who influenced professional wrestling, who changed professional wrestling, who caused it to move in a certain direction, that doesn't mean I necessarily agree with everything that person did or every philosophy that person did, or even their overall kind of philosophy of professional wrestling. What it means is I recognize that they influenced and changed the sport, the profession, the business. And you can respect that while maybe not respecting their overall philosophy, right? Like for example, there are a lot of things that Albert Pike said that I think were very valid and very correct. And or even if not correct, at least is very interesting. There are a lot of things he said I think are incorrect, right? I think ultimately, though, where he was wrong is in his view, not just Freemasons, but every group or organization that seeks light and seeks knowledge and tries to, in a variety of ways, you know, teach us about how to live in this world, that ultimately we are all serving Lucifer, the light bringer, not Lucifer as in Satan, not Lucifer as in, um, the fallen angel, but rather a Prometheus type figure whom he separated. He would probably, or he could argue that it's the same thing with like football players. If you're on a football team and every day you're practicing, you're learning more about life, you're learning more about skills and abilities that are applicable to life, as well as learning about the game of football itself. That is, you receiving knowledge and wisdom. I'm sure Albert Pike would say, you are also, in a sense, serving the light bringer, Lucifer, not Satan, but this other entity. And in that, I think he was 100% wrong and 100% incorrect. But he can have that philosophy, and I can disagree with that philosophy while still agreeing that many of the things he said hold value, and many of the reforms were worthwhile reforms. So I hope that made sense. Um, Also, a lot of my friends are part of that, right? It is not. Uh, what it would mean to be the level of a god, um, I have no idea. That would be up to your religious or spiritual leadership. Freemasonry just wants to make man the best version of a man that he can be. And that's it. The best community member, the best father, the best husband, the best person. It's not about rising above that. I don't even know how you would. That's a spiritual question. No strategy, the grandest mason. There is no such thing as the grandest mason. There are grandmasters. No one grandmaster is more grand than the other. They are people. Freemasonry is not a cult. If Freemasonry was a cult, I might say, um, he is, but obviously I wouldn't say that because we don't venerate individuals in that way. Um, There are obligations, Paul, but that's not the same thing as, I don't know what an omerta is. And please don't forget to share these streams with other people. So Mario Heat, by the way, Mario Heat, I think you're new. I hope you'll hit the like button and the subscribe button. I'd very much appreciate that. Women are allowed to be Freemasons. We have the Order of Women Freemasons, which has existed for longer than women had the right to vote in England. We also have co-masonry in France, for example, and there's Eastern Star. There are different meetings, different degrees, different times. Um, they all have common rituals and common ceremonies, but different purposes, different goals, different. There's differences as well within them. So, um, no, they are, and I think Order of Women Freemasons is a great example of that. Good day. I can't pronounce that. Gureonz. Please hit like and subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. I hope you'll also consider sharing this stream with others, with friends, with family, on your social media feeds. That would help out big time, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. We don't have mixed meetings. They are separate. Now, again, there is Eastern Star, which is for men and women. So that, I guess, is a mixed meeting. There is also there's co-masonry, which again is not a recognized Masonic body in many jurisdictions. It would be considered irregular, but I have no beef with them personally, and they are men and women. There's also Rainbow, which is a order for young women ages like 9 to 21, if I'm getting the ages correct. And they may have, Masons visiting some of their events as well. So that would be for both men and women, parents, I guess, in many cases. Okay, welcome, Alex. I love Chicago. In my opinion, Chicago is the greatest city in the world. I love Windsor, don't get me wrong. I love Winnipeg. I love Canada. But I absolutely, absolutely love Chicago. In my opinion, Chicago and Glenview is the greatest city in the world. Actually, Alex from 357, I wrote a paper about why I love Chicago and Chicago Freemasonry. Maybe you will get to check it out at some point. Pizza at Frank's was wonderful. That was great pizza. I remember you guys telling me that what I was eating was real Chicago pizza because it was thin crust. And you basically said that, that thick crust stuff is for tourists. I don't know if it was you, but somebody said thick crust is for tourists. It's actually all about thin crust pizza. That's where it's at. Could I share something that really changed your life from Masonry? Well, so the thing that I couldn't get anywhere else from Freemasonry is that Freemasonry lets me feel closer to my grandfather. He passed away before I was born, but he was a Freemason. And by joining a lodge and being part of Freemasonry, I do feel much closer to him than I think I would have otherwise. So that is something I could not get from anywhere other than Freemasonry. I don't know if Freemasonry changed my life. I think Freemasonry has put me in a privileged position to change the lives of others, to help others. So that's been really good. But I think that is something. And I think that Freemasonry in general puts us in a privileged position to try to help others. Through benevolence, through support, we are able to build better communities, more civil communities, more loving communities. We take the practice of brotherly love from within a lodge and we take them outside of the lodge. They fight because it's not even lower. Any Masons can fight of different levels. It's just human nature. You can preach, or I don't want to use the term preach because preaching is has too many religious connotations. You can have whatever ideas you want, right? Or tell people to be to practice brotherly love. Human beings are human beings. They're going to get into disputes. They're going to get into disagreements. The question is, how do you deal with those things, right? How do you deal with them in a healthy way? And I think Freemasonry does provide you with the tools. Excuse me, as I have hiccups, does provide people with the tools to deal with those disputes in a positive, healthy way. But yeah, Mr. Works, you don't have to, if you're looking for ways to change your life, there are many books that will absolutely help you find those ways. And I hope that you, if you're looking to change your life, I would suggest think about what you're interested in, think about what you enjoy, and go from there. I've never seen them. I'm sure they have lodged legal cases against one another. They can bring up Masonic charges. But again, that's a relatively civilized way to deal with a disagreement. It's much more civilized than, for example, physical fights. And it has, I've never really seen two Masons bring legal charges to each other. They can bring Masonic charges, but that's different. Right? That's basically saying this person, I do think, did, this person did something unmasonic, whatever that could be. I mean, I like to think my intention is pure as well. Yeah, I'm not sure the tower to which you are referring. So I cannot help you with that. Okay, so you're saying the 9/11 towers? It was a terrorist attack. It's all I can think. We are going to be, I've heard them do it. I mean, again, it's possible. Look, Freemasons are human beings, and so again, all of the challenges, all of the issues, all of the problems, all of the disputes, anything that exists within the world is going to exist within Freemasons. Freemasons are not always going to live up to the ideals which they profess. Again, I've used this example before. George Washington saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal. To say that while owning slaves is an example of a Freemason not living up to the ideal to which he had written. Within Freemasonry, not everybody lives up to the ideals of brotherly love. That doesn't mean the ideals are not valid and worth pursuing. No one's ever brought me up on Masonic charges for this channel. I try my best to make sure I don't do anything that would constitute or warrant a Masonic charge. But if it does, then I guess it happens and you deal with it, right? You have to figure out what's important to you, why you think it's important. And sometimes that means be willing to, deal with whatever the consequences might be. Though having said that, I have never been brought up on Masonic charges, and I try my best to make sure I'm not doing anything that would put me at risk of that. Well, I mean, it's not doing the same thing. It's taking the lessons and bringing them outside the lodge. So, for example, if you're a football player, when you're playing football, you are practicing teamwork, right? And you're practicing teamwork and being there for your teammates. You can take those ideas of teamwork, and once you're outside of the football game, outside of the football team, you can take those ideas and practice them at your work, in your home, with your family, with your friends. I mean, teamwork is something that is illuminated by football, but can be practiced outside of it. Within Freemasonry, one of the things we illuminate is brotherly love. That can be illuminated within a lodge, but practiced outside of it. Um, I would hope that people who are Freemasons would, in some ways, do the same thing, quote unquote, or at least act in a similar manner, both inside and outside of a lodge. Otherwise, you're kind of missing the point in a lot of ways of it. Hello, James Patterson. Thank you for being here. Hello, Mid-Ick. Please, anybody who's just joining me, please take a moment to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I hope you are all doing very, very well and having an excellent day. I hope you guys join me for my 2,000 push-ups. My 2,000 push-ups started with 63 push-ups this morning at 10 a.m. It's going to continue tomorrow at 10 a.m. once again. The reason we had 63 push-ups is because 63% of adults say that being kind helps with their mental health. So that's a pretty good reason to be kind. Getting up to the 32nd can be really quick. There is no time frame on the 33rd. Or you can take your time. It can take a few years, a few decades. It really depends on your own personal Masonic journey and how what you want to do and how you want to operate within it. You are welcome, Courtney, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to be ending this stream soon. I had to start late, unfortunately, which means I have to I still can't, I have to finish this stream at 3 approximately. I probably a little earlier than that. Um, at a moderate pace, because every jurisdiction is different. There's some jurisdictions in the States where you can actually go from 4th to 32nd in a weekend. Um, in Canada, it's usually in the fall. You have one reunion where you go in Lodge of Perfection. Sorry, in spring you do Lodge of Perfection, which means you get from your 4th to your 14th degree. Then in fall you do Lodge of Rose Croix, which is 15 to 18, and then the next year. So I'd say 2 years in Canada. Maybe strategy master. What do you mean by that? In terms of elaborating on what I want to do. I mean, just like I said, within Freemasonry, ultimately the pace at which one, for example, takes different offices, takes different degrees, whatever it might be, all of that is dependent on the brother himself. Yes, Courtney, please stay warm and safe, especially in Windsor right now. We're expecting to get a pretty cold snap and a lot of cold weather. So yeah, it should be fun. I do, Ann Ogden. I love Mexican food. In fact, some of the greatest Masonic meals I've ever had are Mexican food. My favorite type of food, though, is seafood and antipasto and like charcuterie. I love cheese boards and trays. I've actually ordered a few of those for Masonic meetings, but I would say the brothers actually much prefer. Um, um, I much prefer Mexican. When I did Mexican as a junior warden, that got hugely popular. So there you go. You can take that for whatever it's worth. This is live, Kilmon Kills. Kilmon, I can't even pronounce that. Clicks. This is live, I promise you. Strategy, if you want to join your local lodge, all the power to you. There's no rush. Take your time. And when you're ready, approach the lodge and express your interest in joining. That's what matters, right? It's up to you to express your interest in joining. I'm not showing the spaceship today. Very sorry to disappoint. Actually, as of right now, in case people are curious, I just saw a report saying in the States, the United States inflation rate is actually rising. According to Reuters, U.S. inflation isn't subsiding, it's heating up again. I've said it a million times, you cannot separate the condition of Freemasonry from the economic, social, or other conditions within a country. If U.S. inflation is heating up, that's going to affect Freemasons in a variety of ways. You are welcome, Kaiju. Maybe one day you will see the spaceship. Who knows? Well, the key thing is, Kilmon, never assume, right? That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make is making assumptions. If you think, what you can do is always just ask, is this a new stream or pre-recorded stream? Kilmon, I hope you'll hit the like button and the subscribe button. Help me get a few more subscribers. It's going great so far. I'm over 3,470, which is a real honor. So thank you to everybody who's helped me get those. And I hope everybody is doing well. Consider, sharing the channel with others, liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing videos, turning on the notifications bell, all that good jazz. It helps out big time. I am repetitive. One of the reasons is because I always have different people coming and going on the stream. So one of my goals is to make sure that I repeat information I think is important, thereby ensuring that if you're coming on for a couple minutes, you hear me saying whatever I think is relevant and important to say. Looking fresh today. Thank you. I try. I think this is a decent shirt. I should ask people to rate my wardrobe. Though I definitely need to do my laundry. So this is my last chance to, if I don't do any laundry today, tomorrow I'll come on the stream naked, and then no one is going to tune in. I can assure you of that. I try my best. Thank you, Strategy. I do think I'm good at speaking, not to toot my own horn. I have a lot of things I'm not good at. Believe me, I know that. But I do think I am absolutely a good speaker. Now, again, other people may very well disagree with that, and that is perfectly fine. But I think I'm a good speaker. Again, I will be tomorrow I will be rocking out a stream at 1 a.m. I'll be back on at 10 a.m. with more push-ups, which I'm very much looking forward to. I hope you guys will check that out. I hope you guys will consider doing it with me. Do any exercises. Like, if I'm doing 63 push-ups, you should do, you could do 63 sit-ups or 63 arm rotations or 63 seconds of stretching or breathing exercises. Do whatever it is that is possible for you, that is safe for you, but we're all going to be in this together. And absolutely, Strategy Master, Freemasonry 100% helped with the speaking skills that I got. Because I'm forced to speak not so much in public, but within a Masonic lodge, a Masonic meeting, right? I have to be able to express my point of view, especially if I would like the lodge to engage in a certain activity. Maybe I want to hold a banquet, a celebration, a special event. I may need to give a toast. If I'm the worshipful master, I need to be able to explain what's happening in the lodge and how things are going. All of that stuff is helpful, or all of that stuff, Freemasonry helps. I am not El Dorado. I actually don't drink. I've never drank, except for coffee. Though I do have to go to the washroom like crazy. I've had too much coffee this morning. Terry, I did not, but please hit me the like and please hit the like and subscribe button. Help me get to 3,475 subscribers. I'm just 2 away. We are going to give this stream another, let's say, 5 minutes. Then we'll be ending it. I'll be back on at 1 a.m. And then tomorrow, again, 10 a.m., the next day of push-up challenge. Consider doing them with me. Exercise is good for mental health. But again, if you can't do the push-ups, consider sit-ups. If you can't do sit-ups, consider stretching. You can't do stretching. Consider 63 seconds of breathing exercises. Just do what you can, nothing else, right? And what is safe for you to do. Why the secrecy? It's not secrecy, it's privacy, just saying. Privacy is valid for many different reasons, but I'll give you 3. First, consider Freemasonry like a family recipe. If you have a family recipe, just one saying that was passed down from your grandparents to your parents to you, and you're going to pass it on to your kids, one of the mistakes, so one thing you're not going to do, one mistake you wouldn't make is you're not going to share that family recipe with the public. Even if that family recipe could make people's lives better by giving them a new recipe, you're not going to share it, or you may choose not to share it, because maintaining the privacy of that recipe is a way to maintain the bonds between your past, present, and future generations of your family. Within Freemasonry, what we pass down is our ritual and ceremony. If I start to share it in public with others, it affects the bonds of brotherhood between past, present, and future generations of Freemasons. Also, the rituals and ceremonies are not the same everywhere. They are different depending on where you are. If I start to share private information of rituals, you're going to go into Freemasonry potentially expecting certain things that will not happen. And as a consequence of that, you'll not enjoy the ceremony as much. Don't expect, just, be present. Happiness equals reality minus expectations. I would say happiness equals presence minus expectations. And third, if I do share rituals with you and you join in a jurisdiction where it's the same, I've given you spoilers. You're not going to enjoy the process as much. Another way to think about it, just what Rondo said, NDAs. Many businesses improve lives. Many businesses have products or services that improve lives. The product or service is not kept a secret, but maybe the manufacturing process or the way they create the product is kept private or is kept a secret. The benefits of Freemasonry, the way Freemasonry makes people's lives better, that is not kept a secret. That's very public. The ritual, that's private, but those are, I just gave you the reasons why we do so. I hope you'll hit the like button and subscribe button if you have not done so yet. I hope what I said made sense. Terry, those sound like horrible nightmares. You may need to talk to somebody about what's going on. Thank you, just one saying. I try my best to have good answers, and thank you, Rondo, for the reminder of the NDA, which is a very good, metaphor. I mean, no, Freemasonry is not going to push you. Freemasonry lets you go at your own pace. There may be some individual Freemasons who don't understand that and may try to push you to get a second or third degree, but you just tell them, I'm going at my own pace. And I'm, for one, have no issue with somebody. If you spend, you join Freemason, you spend 10, 15 years as an entered apprentice, I have no issue with that at all. All right, guys, I have to go to the washroom like crazy. So I'm going to end this stream now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be back on tonight. I'm going to be posting some more content on my social media channels. Please check that out. And don't forget, tomorrow, 10 a.m., another live stream. Me doing push-ups, probably in front of Caesar's Windsor. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Have a great night. Or great day. Great afternoon. Great whatever time it is. Oops.